My name is Jordan Hayes. I built my own marketing agency to over $1 million per year in revenue. And in this video, I'm going to show you 4 behavioral signs that predict if your employees are going to quit. So last quarter, I analyzed 47 marketing agency resignations from remote teams, people leaving marketing agencies. And here's what shocked me. In 89% of cases, the warning signs were clearly visible 6 to 8 weeks before anyone handed in their resignation letter. And the founders that I spoke with, they missed every single sign, and it cost them an average $87,000 per replacement. So if you're running a remote marketing agency, what I'm about to show you in this video could save your best people from walking out the door and could literally save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in replacing your best people. So first of all, why should you listen to me? My name is Jordan Hayes. I run Hayes Media. It's a marketing agency where we serve e-commerce brands. We've done over $2.8 million in revenue. Last year, we did over $1 million per year in revenue. And you can come to our website, hayesmedia.co. We've been around for a while. You can literally see that we're a real company. We have real case studies, testimonials, etc. And I can tell you with absolute certainty, the biggest threat to your agency's growth isn't client churn. It isn't market competition. It's losing your A players when you least expect it. And as I mentioned, this video is going to cover 4 behavioral signs that predict resignations 2 to 3 months in advance. And most importantly, a privacy-first framework that you can implement in the next 30 days to protect your team and protect your business. And this isn't about surveillance. It isn't about micromanagement. This is about building a system that helps you support your team before they reach breaking point. So before we get into the behavioral signs of why people actually quit, let's talk about why you're blind to these signs. And this isn't just you, this is me, right? Every remote marketing agency owner that doesn't have visibility into these things is blind to this. So why is that? Well, in a remote environment, you lose the signals you naturally pick up in an office, right? In an office environment, you can sense when someone's off, right? You feel their energy. You can see it in their body language, their actions. You can sense when someone starts distancing themselves from the team, right? It's very visible. Remote work has eliminated that visibility. It's great for a lot of things, but there's a lot of downsides as well. And this is one of the big downsides. Most agency owners, they try to compensate for this by implementing what I call presence theater. More meetings, more check-ins, more status updates. But here's the paradox. The more you try to recreate office visibility through surveillance, micromanagement, the faster you destroy trust and accelerate the exact problems you're trying to prevent. What you need is more insight into team health in remote environments, but the traditional ways of getting that insight are exactly what destroys team health. So what do? What's the solution? Well, we need to shift from monitoring presence to monitoring patterns. I'm going to explain why and how that works. So let's cover the 4 behavioral signs that lead to people leaving and resigning from marketing agencies. First sign is the collaboration cliff. This is when someone who normally engages actively in team discussions, brainstorms, project planning suddenly becomes passive. They're still showing up to meetings, but they're no longer volunteering ideas. They're not pushing back on strategies. They're not asking questions about the future. And one agency owner that I spoke to, he told me his creative director went from contributing 8 to 12 ideas per strategy session to maybe contributing 2 or 3. And he didn't notice until she'd already accepted another offer and left the agency. Now, if you think about this, you might be able to spot it sometimes. But if you notice like someone's not collaborating as much here and there, you may not pick it up as a sign, right? It may be like, well, all these other times that person was participating, right? But you're missing a lot of the micro behaviors and the patterns. And that is really the missing link here, right? Because if you're not on these meetings and you're tracking, let's just say, meeting attendance, and that person shows up, then you're thinking everything's fine. There's nothing wrong. But what if they're just there, camera off, just not contributing anything to the meeting? That's a sign. So sign number 2 is communication pattern shifts. And this isn't about the volume of messages or the words that someone is saying. It's about tone and timing. Let's just take someone who usually responds in Slack within minutes, and now they start taking a few hours. Messages get shorter and the casual banter disappears. They're still responsive enough to do their job, but the energy is gone. And I'm not talking about surveillance here. I don't track keystrokes or screenshot people's screens. That's invasive and counterproductive. I'm talking about noticing patterns and how people naturally communicate in channels you already have access to, places you have visibility into already, right? Nothing that you cannot already see. For example, let's just say you have a team member who used to share wins in the channel, they stop celebrating, right? Someone who added context to the update starts giving bare minimum answers. These sorts of shifts matter. And hardly any agency owners that I know pay attention to these things. And maybe they don't even know that they're happening until it's too late. Sign number 3, silent disengagement. This is the hardest to spot because nothing is visibly wrong. Work gets done, deadlines are met, but in meetings, they spend more time on mute. Their cameras are off when they used to be on. They answer questions, but they don't ask any questions. They attend, but they don't participate. And silent disengagement is mental checkout before physical checkout. They've already decided to leave, they just haven't told you yet. And in my experience, once someone hits this phase, you maybe have 2 to 3 weeks before the resignation email lands in your inbox. The final behavioral sign, number 4, the delivery pattern change. So this is when your A player, who used to deliver work early or on time, starts cutting it very close to deadlines. Not missing the deadlines, but submitting right at the deadline. Or they're doing exactly what's required and nothing more. There's no extra polish, there's no above and beyond. And what they've done is they've shifted from ownership mentality to employee mentality, as in, get this done and move on. They're not going that extra mile to over-deliver on the work and the expectations. And this is also a tricky one, because if you have someone who you know that their workload is high enough where they will be submitting things on the day that you set as a deadline, right? Then you have to take that with a grain of salt. Because technically they're still submitting things on time, and that might be the way that they've always done it, or maybe it's the way that things just are because their workload is high enough so that they can't actually deliver things early. Then maybe you have a workload problem that you need to solve. But if you notice a pattern in like very early delivery to very late delivery, that could be a behavioral sign that someone has already checked out. So now that we've covered the 4 behavioral signs, a lot of these might seem very obvious, right? So if they're so obvious, why don't regular one-to-ones and employee surveys catch them? And the answer reveals a fundamental misunderstanding about how disengagement actually works. Let me explain. Traditional check-ins, right? Your one-to-ones, your employee surveys, they fail for 3 reasons. First reason is timing. Most agencies, they do monthly one-to-ones, and that's perfect, fine, whatever. But by the time your monthly meeting rolls around, your employee has already been mentally checked out for 2 or 3 weeks, right? Just once a month. Like, it's way too little, way too infrequent to get data points. And these signals have been there, but you're only looking once a month. And the signals have been there all the time. The problem is you can't see them because you're only looking once a month. Second problem, the reason why these standard traditional check-ins fail in a remote environment. Honesty problem. Think about this from your employee's perspective. They're starting to feel burned out or undervalued. Are they really going to tell you in a formal one-to-one? Likelihood is that they're not, right? Because they don't want to seem uncommitted, they don't want to risk their reputation, and frankly, by the time they're showing these behavioral signs, they're often past the point of believing that things will change, right? Things have been this way for so long, so why should I believe that things are going to change? And the very interesting thing is that one study found that only 28% of employees who are actively job searching will admit it to their manager when directly asked, right? Your people aren't lying to you, they're just protecting themselves, right? Like, most people are not going to tell you that they're looking for another job, right? Like, it's not going to happen. So you can't expect that. Now, the third problem with the traditional method of these check-ins, right? Your one-to-ones, your employee surveys, is the survey problem, right? A lot of these surveys are anonymous, or a lot of companies do anonymous surveys, right? They sound great in theory, but they're lagging very, very important indicators. And by the time survey results are compiled, analyzed, and acted upon, you're looking at 4 to 6 weeks minimum. Your A player has already updated their LinkedIn profile and they've started taking recruiter calls. Now, even if you do surveys that are not anonymous, that you know who submitted them, and those could be submitted weekly, the problem is that some companies do this monthly or even quarterly, right? And again, you're just not getting enough data points and you're not acting fast enough in a remote environment, in an agency environment that moves so quickly. So if this stuff fails, then what do we do, right? Well, we need a system that monitors behavioral signals in real time, respects privacy, and creates opportunities for intervention before disengagement becomes resignation. And that's exactly what we're going to build, okay? I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. So let me be crystal clear about something. I'm not advocating for employee surveillance. I don't want to spy on my employees, and you shouldn't either, right? There's no keystroke tracking, there's no screenshot software, there's no monitoring of time spent in applications. That stuff destroys trust and drives away the exact people you're trying to retain. What I'm talking about here is being intentional about observing the signals your team is already broadcasting publicly, things you can already see, but you're not seeing, right? Think about it this way. If you ran an in-person agency, you'd naturally notice if someone who usually chats with the team started eating lunch alone every day. You'd notice if someone who was always first to volunteer for projects suddenly stopped. If someone's body language in meetings changed. You wouldn't call that surveillance, would you? You just call that being observant, caring about your people, just being a human. The problem is that you cannot do this in remote work. You're not with your team every day in person. And remote work requires us to adapt these same observational skills to digital signals. And the beautiful thing about this is these signals are often clearer in remote environments, not murkier. Okay, so we get an advantage here if we use it in the right way. So here's the framework. You're looking at voluntary public behaviors. Things like participation in team channels, contribution to collaborative documents, engagement in team meetings, attendance at optional sessions. These are the public behaviors that actually really matter. And these are things that people choose to do or not to do in spaces everyone can see. You're not tracking their productivity software. You're not monitoring their hours. There's no screenshots of what they're working on. You're not reading their private messages. You're observing patterns and how they show up for the team. And critically, you're using this information to start conversations and not to make accusations. This is the most important thing, because you could have the insights and everything at your disposal. But then if you start making accusations to say, hey, you're not doing this, I noticed that you're not doing, like, that is the one way to create friction and to create resentment in your team. So if you notice that someone's engagement is dropping, you don't say, hey, I've been tracking your Slack activity. Like, you don't say that, right? You say, hey, I noticed you've been quieter in team discussions lately. Is everything okay? Is there something we should talk about? Because look, the goal here is connection, it's not control. If you see that someone on your team is struggling, it is your job as a leader to step in and make sure that they have the resources they need to do the job, to make sure that they're not drowning in work, to make sure that everything is outside of work, right? What if they're dealing with something in their personal life and maybe they need some time off, or maybe they need to take it a little bit easier for the next few weeks while they solve that issue, right? These are like real human level things. But usually in remote companies, none of this is discussed. Maybe once you have a huge company with a HR department, maybe they take care of it. But, with the relatively small marketing agencies, usually this stuff is not even thought about. So I want to share something to really, really drive this home. And this is a case study of how one agency saved $150,000 by detecting employee disengagement early and stepping in. So this is a 19-person content marketing agency. We'll keep them anonymous to respect the privacy of this company, but they came to me after losing 2 senior strategists within 3 weeks of each other. And the owner, we'll call her Jessica, was devastated, right? And these just weren't employees. These were client-facing leaders who each managed about $400,000 in annual revenue worth of clients. So the replacement cost was absolutely brutal. You have recruitment fees, training time, client relationship rebuilding, the projects that suffered during the transition, and Jessica calculated it would cost about $75,000 per person when you factored everything in. So 2 people, $150K, right? We're not talking about small numbers here. So we implemented what I call a team health dashboard. That's a weekly tracking system for the behavioral patterns I mentioned earlier. And we looked at Slack response time trends, meeting participation scores, capacity reports, which is a green, yellow, red indicator submitted by each employee at the end of every week. Peer collaboration frequency. This is how often people work together on projects. And proactive contribution tracking. This is like the number of ideas shared, the problem solved without being asked, those sorts of things. And 6 weeks after we implemented this, the dashboard flagged their lead designer, Mike. So Mike showed 4 red flags across decreased Slack engagement, 3 consecutive weeks of yellow-red capacity, declining meeting participation, and he stopped contributing to their creative brainstorm channel. Big alerts. And Jessica, the owner, her instinct was to assume Mike was just busy, but the data said otherwise. So she scheduled a genuine conversation with Mike, just a catch-up, not a performance review, not an interrogation, just a real talk, one-to-one. And it turns out Mike was absolutely burning out. He'd been assigned 3 major rebrands simultaneously, all with aggressive timelines, and he felt like he couldn't say no because everyone else seemed busy too. And he started looking at job posting. This is so common, and it's something we faced as well. Like, we're not immune to this, right? We're just another marketing agency that faces the same problems as you, as other marketing agencies. And what is so common in marketing agencies is that people rarely say no to taking on more work. Because maybe they feel like if they do say no, there's like some punishment to that, right? Or maybe they just think that it's the standard that they have to meet. Like, they take it on anyway. And most people are just not confrontational. So they're not just going to tell you like, hey, no, I'm drowning in work. Don't give me that. Some people will. But for the most part, people are unlikely to say that. So what happened here after Mike was absolutely burning out was Jessica, the owner, immediately restructured his workload, brought in a contractor to help with one of the rebrands, and pushed back a timeline with one of the client. Created more space for Mike to do the work that he was actually meant to be delivering. And Mike didn't just stay at the company, he became one of the strongest advocates for the new team health system that's in place. 3 months later, another issue, right? The dashboard flagged Sarah, similar pattern, and another intervention conversation that Jessica had with Sarah revealed that she felt stuck in her career progression and was considering leaving to find growth opportunities. And this is actually a case where like the employee was just being real, like, hey, this is what it is. They're not trying to hide that they're looking for other jobs. It's just like she wanted to stay at the company, but she felt stuck. And sometimes their employees, they don't know how to say this to you. So what happened was that Jessica decided to create a senior strategist role for Sarah to give her career progression. And she gave Sarah 2 junior team members to mentor and increased her responsibility on strategic client work. Sarah stayed and is now working towards a director position. So this is actually a complete 180 reversal. Someone who was on her way out is now in senior leadership in the company. And the math here is simple. Jessica spent about $3,000 on implementing the tracking system and maybe 10 hours a month reviewing it. And in return, she prevented 2 resignations that would have cost $150,000 to replace. It's a 50-to-1 return on investment. It's crazy. But more importantly, she built a culture where people felt seen and supported. And that's the power of early detection combined with genuine intervention. And that's the key. We're not just tracking these signals, we're not just surfacing these insights, but the intervention matters just as much as the detection. First of all, it's not surveillance. It's how do we support our team? And second of all, it's when we see a sign, again, how can we support our team, right? We're on the same team. It's not me against you. We're on the same side of the court here. So how can we work together to get through this? And that's exactly what this agency did. And you can see the results, right? So what does your next step look like from watching this video, right? How do you actually take action on this? Well, the reality is that your team is sending you signals right now in Slack, in your project management tool, on meetings, in email threads. And the question here is, are you actually paying attention, or are you waiting until someone resigns to realize that you missed it? So I want you to start this week. Start by picking 3 of the behavioral red flags that I went through, and I want you to start tracking them, right? It'll take you 20 minutes to set up. Then schedule one genuine check-in conversation with a team member you haven't deeply connected with in a while. Even if that team member is performing, just catch up. And that's it. 2 simple actions that can save you 6 figures in turnover costs and immeasurable damage to client relationships. I can't overstate the importance of this stuff. And if you want to automate all of the monitoring and insights on your team to support them even further, check out Yander.io. This is a software that I built to solve the specific issues that I spoke about in today's video. We faced this in our team. High workload that was coming out of nowhere, burnout, team members that are coasting, disengaged, which all lead to client issues. And we want to keep our A players. So what do? We built something that plugs into the existing tools that we're using, Slack, emails, Notion, our meetings, and it surfaces the insights from them. It uses all that data, their response times against baseline, are things being delivered on time, are they being delivered late? What are people saying in their messages? What is the sentiment? Okay, and it uses all those signals to create individual scores for each team member about the risk of them leaving the company, the workload, their engagement, their collaboration. And we can hover over each of these scores and understand why that person has that score. What is the data that the system is using to give us that score? And these are signs and signals that we then use to say to our team, like, hey, how are things going on the workload? Hey, I noticed this. So by using Yander, you don't have to set up manual processes and constantly check them. This just surfaces everything for you. And importantly, this is not a surveillance tool, right? We don't track screenshots, keystrokes. We don't monitor webcam, none of that stuff. It's literally just the things that I can have access to. So if I install this on my team, it's the Slack channels that I'm in. It's the email threads that I'm CC'd on. It's the meetings that I'm invited to. It's the Notion pages that I have access to. It's all the areas where I literally could go and look at the messages, right? I can see the stuff with my own eyes already. It's nothing that I can't yet see. And we don't track anything beyond that. No private DMs, no private emails, no private Notion pages, nothing. Just the things that we have access to. And what it's doing is it's surfacing those insights for us to help our team, to support our team, build a stronger, more cohesive team so that we can deliver better client work and we can grow as a company, and therefore everyone on the team can grow as well. Go to Yander.io, give it a try for free, and see what it surfaces with your team. You might be surprised by the results. That's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.